And welcome into the Friday edition of Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Friday morning. Busy night last night in the world of sports. We got a whole lot to get into on the program here today. Joe Rexrode live from Charlotte, North Carolina. Joe, how we doing? How much sleep we running on? How's life?
Yeah, man. Not much. Not good. Not much. Bad.
Not good, not much, bad. That's how we're doing this
There
morning
you
from Joe
go.
Rexrode. Nick Keyser, how we doing?
Doing great, guys. Glad to be here. Plenty to react to, like you said, from last night's games, Robbie. Very happy with Vols and the Nashville Predators.
Yep. Good night for the Preds. Good night for the Vols. Not a good night for the Kentucky Wildcats. We're going to get to all that throughout the show here today because there's a lot to discuss right now. Jared Stillman will join us at 7 o'clock, TD at 8 o'clock, talking all things Tennessee Titans. And of course, your thoughts all show long. 615 737 1025, our phone number, 615 737 1025. Well, Joe, let's start on the Vols. I mean, that game was over basically from the jump against St. Peter's last night. They dominated the whole way through. They win by more than 30 last night in their first round game. So a nice response from Tennessee to kick off the tournament against St. Peter's. It went pretty much the way that you expected it to go. A blowout win for Tennessee. I thought defensively, especially in the first half, they really locked them down. They didn't allow St. Peter's to do really anything. And then Tennessee got a lot of the shots that they wanted. A couple big shots hit by Santiago Vescovi, which was good to see. Dalton Connect was doing his thing in the first half, and Tennessee rolled to a nice, easy victory last night. Although some injury concerns throughout the game and some hard falls and some physical play, but a nice win for Tennessee last night.
Yeah, I mean they were the SEC's last hope last
Yeah.
night by the time we got to that. So I mean it was kind of weird. I really didn't think there was any way, even less, that St. Peter's had any chances. I'm watching them warm up, and just I'd watched them play against Fairfield and Matt Knezovic, assistant coach for Fairfield, and come back to win that game. But it was just like, man, this is not a team that should be able to, I mean, they can't even score in their own league. But as they're as the teams are out there warming up, every screen in the place goes to Kentucky. And so, I mean, I'm watching the Vols players. They're sneaking glances up there. I mean, the whole arena just reacting. It's like late in the game, and the All-American hero Jack Golke, who we all know him now.
Yep.
Hits a three, and the whole place goes nuts. And he's just like, God, how weird is this? I'm like, I wonder if there's any effect, on like a Tennessee when that's up there, and clearly they know what's going on, and but they saved Greg Sankey. Greg Sankey can tell us again how Georgia should be in this tournament, and who else? Ole Miss, and
Vanderbilt.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, yeah, more opportunities. I mean, my goodness. But no, the Vols I thought really took care of business, and that was really what I was looking at was, can they get Vescovy, James, Gainey any shots? Those guys in the last 10 games combined 23 for 92 from three, 25%. That includes, 9 for 33 and 9 for 34 for Vescovy and James, respectively. So James, I mean, he took one awful shot air ball, and that was it from three. So
Yep.
they're still, and went scoreless, and that's still sort of he just isn't looking for it. And I think that needs to change at some point. But Vescovy for sure, he stepped into a couple, and it looked like old Santiago Vescovy. So I'd say if there was of the individually, that was the most encouraging thing about this game, because the other guy, I mean, Connect and Adu are just it's like they were playing against little kids.
Yeah, Connect and Adu did their thing. I mean, Connect only shot 15 times, ended up with 23 points. Adu 5 of 6 from the field, 15 points for him. So, I mean, those guys played well. Ziegler, he only shot the ball 6 times. He played well. I mean, really the scary part of the game for Tennessee was a tough fall by Jonas Adu, where he was kind of on the floor for a minute. He got up, ended up being okay, but basically got hip checked underneath the basket there and landed hard. And then Awaka was questionable to return for a while. He got back out there at one point, only ended up playing 11 minutes. So really the injury scare and the hard falls last night, the main storyline for Tennessee, but it looks like they're able to come through it.
Yeah, Waka could have had 22. I mean,
Yeah.
like with his strength, I mean, they had no chance. Yeah, so Adu, that was a really hard fall. And I just listening to it, it was right in front of me. Listening to it, I thought it was his head. I'm like, what else could have made that noise except for his skull, you know?
Right.
But apparently it wasn't. In the replay, his head didn't hit, so I guess that was just a really like like his leg hitting hard or hip or whatever. Rick Barnes told us after the game that he was for him it was around the hip area, a little bit of soreness, but they worked it out and he came back out. So yeah, they're okay. I will say that game it was way too chippy and I don't know, I don't think it was like the Zieglers, but it was way too chippy in general. And it was like there were some hard fouls going on, with like 8 minutes left. I'm like, man, you need to get these dudes out of here, Rick Barnes, as fast as you can, because it's just, the one guy got ejected. The St. Peter's uh, guard who got ejected did apologize after. Kind of felt
Yep.
bad for him. It was just mostly some back and forth, some trash talk. But that was a very physical game for such a bad game.
It was, and now the Rick Barnes Bowl coming to fruition, Joe. Texas wins yesterday 56-44. So all we're going to hear about the next 2 days before the game is, hey, did you guys know that Rick Barnes at one point was the coach at the University of Texas? There's going to be a whole lot of that over the next couple of days here.
I mean, it was half the press conference last night. I'm trying to get my crap written and get out of there. And people keep asking about Texas. I'm like, guys, we can do this all day tomorrow. We can do this
Yes.
all day. Come on. But yeah, it's obviously the history. I mean, the Rick Barnes and March thing really is because of Texas. He did things with that program that had never been done before. They'd never really had any basketball tradition at all, but they also, they had the one Final Four, but they had other teams that should have gone deep that people thought were going to the Final Four, and that's kind of where, that tag stuck to him.
I thought, look, I realized that the quality of opponent in St. Peter's is not great, and that's gonna get better here as they move forward here. I thought they were absolutely dialed in on the defensive side of the floor to start the game last night. I mean, I looked up at one point, Joe. I think there was like 4 minutes left in the first half, and St. Peter's had like 15 points. Like, okay, well, I mean, they look like they're playing their elite defense again. And look, again, matchups are going to change and they're going to be dealing with more physically gifted teams as they move forward here. But I thought a good sign last night of the Vols just kind of returning to being locked in defensively, and you saw the effect that had.
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's the maybe best effect of the Mississippi State loss, which of course it was interesting yesterday on the same floor, a few hours before they played Mississippi State, which looks so good against them. Just I was actually stunned to see how they played against Michigan State. That was a bad day for the SEC. We'll get into more of that later.
Yes, we
But
will.
I think that maybe the lingering effect of that game or the positive impact is they talked a lot after that game about, yeah, shots not falling, but you can't affect your D because it did in that game. That wasn't their defense. I mean, Mississippi State shouldn't do, to the Vols what they did in that game on the other end against their defense. And I do think that that's where they refocus on that because that's something you can control. You can control a lot of that stuff more than you can control the ball going in or out. And so if they can scouting report, effort, intensity, the connectedness that they've had most of the year, I mean that's still going to carry you a long way, or has a chance to, as long as you play well enough on offense.
We about to see another upset special from the Fighting Izzos out there as they take on North Carolina next round. What a performance by our co-executive producer yesterday.
Yeah, I tell you, I mean the way he's moonlighting and still getting it done at this age, very impressive. I shouldn't whine about being tired right now.
You should.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I would not pick Michigan State, and it's going to be a home game here for North Carolina, but he is 24-7 in the second game of an NCAA weekend. It's his superpower, so it could be interesting.
It could be. We'll see what happens on that front. Nice start to the tournament last night for Tennessee. Again, the competition is going to step up here, and there's the Rick Barnes stuff heading into the Texas game tomorrow. But I did think a good sign of them playing well defensively last night, and we'll see if offensively they're in a more challenging game against Texas and how they respond to it. Dalton Connect looked good. Ziegler looked good with not really having to do a ton last night. Adu was really good. So good to see from Tennessee. And as you said, Joe, not a great day from the SEC. There's the Kentucky part of this, which we're going to get into here in just a few minutes, because that is just wild that continues to be the case. But Mississippi State goes down yesterday. Like you said, I mean, a game where I thought Mississippi State had a chance not only to beat Michigan State, but I was really intrigued to see them against North Carolina if that's the way things went. And that has ended up not being the way things go. South Carolina goes down yesterday to Oregon, and of course Kentucky in the nightcap. So Tennessee kind of saving the day a little bit for the SEC yesterday. Not a great start for Greg Sankey, the Southeastern Conference. Not a great start.
No, my bracket's destroyed too, by the way. But I did. I mean, I'd like to point out that I did. I mean, how many times this week did I say, "Man, Oakland has a chance. Oakland can legit win that game." I mean, I really thought it was one of those things where if they can get through that one, maybe they can get on a roll. But my goodness, man, and first of all, Jack Golke and Greg. I've known Greg Campy a long time. He's a fantastic guy. I couldn't be happier for that guy. Like, he's just an amazing human. He's been Oakland's coach since 1983. Okay,
Yep.
Like way before anyone ever heard of Oakland, and I'm sure most people in the country still think that like they're in California.
Right.
It's Oakland County, Michigan, suburban Detroit. So that's just fantastic. What a story! And I mean, that again, they are why we love this thing, because you have things like instant American heroes like Jack Golke. But from the Kentucky perspective, I mean, we already got some of the text line. I mean, I can't argue with anybody anymore. I mean, the buyout is $34 million, but man, I mean, his performance in this tournament has become so dreadful. I don't know what you do anymore.
He needs to be fired. They need to move on. Now, look, I could say that because I said he needed to be fired like 2 years ago. So I've not really changed on that. I think he's the most overrated coach in all of sports, and that was on display yet again last night. But what a win for Oakland. And I think before we get into the Kentucky stuff, Joe, I think to your point, last night, that game, and other games that have gone down. I mean, look, Dayton, it was an awesome comeback yesterday. It was fun to watch against Nevada. I was watching that. But the Oakland game last night, a good reminder of why sometimes when you have good things in sports, like this NCAA tournament, just leave it alone. You don't really need to touch it. I think another good reminder of that yesterday.
No, absolutely. No, I mean, it's and there will be more examples, I mean, it's just the idea that you should mess with this because of, football making all of college sports just stupid is, excuse me, stupid.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We're off and running. Tennessee wins yesterday in their opening round game against St. Peter's in the tournament. Coming up next, we'll get into the Kentucky loss. Where does Kentucky go from here? Is the John Calipari era over with the Wildcats? We'll take your thoughts on all that. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hey, Robbie Stanley here. From upsets to buzzer beaters, nothing compares to college basketball in March. It was already a great day yesterday, expecting another one today. Make sure you're tuned into that because it's going to be awesome. We talked about Oakland taking down Kentucky last night. Sometimes you're on the wrong end of those moments. Maybe you were last night, and that's why FanDuel is giving everyone a no-sweat bet from now until March the 20th. Doesn't matter if you're new to FanDuel or already have an account. You'll get bonus bets back if your bet doesn't win. You can even use your no-sweat bet on a college basketball parlay. Got Purdue in action coming up today. I think they're going to win. I've been consistent on that. I think this is the year that Purdue breaks through. So that's the way I'm going with it. You can take it any way you want to take it. When you do it, just make sure you download FanDuel. If you haven't downloaded FanDuel yet, go to FanDuel.com/Rob. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And you must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. You can see terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Make sure you call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Friday morning. Taking your thoughts on the NCAA tournament. Vols handled business last night. Kentucky, not so much. And that is the story of the day in the NCAA tournament. Kentucky falls last night to the hands of Oakland, 80-76, the final score. Jack Golke jacking up 10 3-pointers last night, Joe. It was amazing to watch. 10 of 20 from the field, 10 of 20 from three-point line, 32 points. They were talking about it on the postgame, Joe. He's taken, and I'm going to get the numbers not exactly right here, but somewhere like in the neighborhood of like 300 and something threes this year and 8 2-pointers. He's taken 8 2-point shots the whole year. It's wild. Dude lives by the three, and he absolutely got all over Kentucky last night.
Yep, he's made 4. He's made 4 2-point baskets this year. Yeah, that's what. And Campy always has guys like that. Just you be ready because I mean they got a really good team. Trey Townsend's a big time player. Rocket Watts, I mean he has been Michigan State's point guard in the NCAA tournament before. So like they've got some guys, but Golke just insane, and some of the makes he had last night were just like not open at all. Why would you shoot that? Oh, that's good too. So. Incredible story. And that's the thing. It's like on the one hand, I can't dispute what you're saying about Cal. That game was like, I mean, I thought Kentucky, played pretty well offensively. I mean, they couldn't get Reed Shepherd free, and that's something that you give Oakland some credit for. Like they were not going to let him kill them. Antonio Reeves did, but Reed Shepherd didn't. I mean, I didn't think Kentucky was terrible on D. That's the thing. I really didn't. I thought that they
Yep.
were actually, like, compared to how they've played in a lot of games where they're just, not guarding a ball screen and then some guy has a free lane to the top. I mean, they were just watching Jack Golke just bury them with bombs. And then there was some tough contested makes. Yeah, the guy hit the three in the corner. His name eludes me. That was the biggest shot of the game where Rocket Watts finds him, not Golke. I mean, they were not letting Golke touch it. They were trying to deny him. I mean, but it's the NCAA tournament. And so you get someone going and it's like people have out of body experiences in this thing.
It was amazing to watch. And like you said, I mean, Golke looked like Steph Curry out there with some of the shots he was hitting, just kind of fading away, falling away from the basket, shooting over two people. And it was crazy to watch. And look, in order for Oakland to pull off an upset like that, you needed players like that to do that. So that's what happened. And having said that, we talked about this the other day. Kentucky has not been to the second weekend of the tournament since 2019. They have not been to the Final Four since 2015. And at that place, with that fan base, with that investment, with all these things, I mean, we knew that was going to have to change for John Calipari this year, or everything was going to be on the table. Now, I realize, like we talked about, the buyout is huge. One thing that really bothers me about him, and he did it again last night. I saw Kyle Tucker tweeting about it. As soon as they lose, he goes right into like throwing, oh, well, the freshmen, they weren't playing the way that they played all year. And, I thought the preparation was really good, but just didn't make shots. And all. It's like, dude, even if that's the case, like, take some personal responsibility. And there was just none
Yeah,
of that
for sure.
last night. And Kyle Tucker was tweeting about it. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, take some responsibility for what's going on out there. It was Cal throwing his team under the bus, as he is wont to do after the game last night.
Yeah, and just talking about past success and making excuses. And no, I mean, look, Kentucky fans are sick of it. I get it. I mean, we've got a bunch of comments about, you know, pretty much the same thing. People are sick of it. Glenn says, if the cost of not firing him is going to be more than 34 million, they're going to lose a generation of young fans. Apathy has set in a portion of the fan base. UK will become like IU, a historic blue blood who's no longer relevant. I think we're not there yet, Glenn. I think, that may be a little bit dramatic. I don't think there's, I mean, that fan base I think they're angry right now. I don't think they're close to apathy. Apathy is what happened at IU. I mean, they had a long stretch of really not being relevant at all, not even being expected or not being in the tournament or being expected to do anything in the tournament or having good enough teams or being a factor in the Big Ten. I mean, that's not this. Okay. But I get the anger for sure. I mean, that fan base, they're gonna, at some point they're gonna move on and they're gonna be able to recruit and have all the nice things, But I can't blame anyone who is done with him now because I agree. Like the lack of accountability is also a part of this that you can't ignore.
Well, and it's also like, he was talking about last night. Well, I mean, it's an older game now, so should I change the way I'm doing things? And it's like, yeah, probably. You probably should. I mean,
well, and he has too, by the way. I mean, he brought in Oscar Tshiebwe, and that was,
hey,
he's done that.
He has, but like he always in these conversations, he always points back to like the players that are in the NBA and the money that the players that he's coached are making in the NBA. And while I get that, that's great. You've had a ton of talent. To me, Joe, if I'm a Kentucky fan, the only thing that underscores is how much of an underachiever you are with all the talent you've had roll through there. And you have not sniffed a Final Four since 2015, and you haven't won a championship since 2012. And you've had probably the best talent of anybody in the country, bar none, throughout that span. Like, to me, you keep talking about all this money that your players and all these people are making in the NBA and the talent level and all these different things. You have one championship to show for it, and you hadn't been to the Final Four in almost a decade.
Right. I mean, that stuff is definitely something you want to sell to recruits. So in the right situation, talk it up. When you lose games like this, your fans do not want to hear it. And like you said, it almost makes you look worse. If you want to remind everybody how many great players have come through here and done nothing in March. I mean, that's not necessarily something that I would be wanting to broadcast. So yeah, it's his messaging is bad. And again, like that game, I don't think it was like an example of like bad coaching or bad scouting. I really don't. It's
I
just the
agree.
NCAA tournament, But the problem is when it happens over and over, and when 2 years ago you lost that game to St. Peter's, which, by the way, with your old Oscar Sheboy, that was big, strong, old guy, anchoring everything in the middle. That's back then. People were like, "Yeah, I've got to have more, got to have more one and dones." I mean, the bottom line is the one and done model really doesn't work. I mean, the 2012 team, yes, if you have Anthony Davis and Duke's team in 15. I mean,
Sure.
other than that, the teams that win it all have a lot more veterans year after year after year. So, you know, I, I mean, he's talking about should I change? I think he does what he does, and I again don't blame Kentucky fans for wanting something different now.
So, do we think that something different is actually going to happen? We'll get into that. Take your thoughts on that coming up next. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. Another disappointing exit early in the tournament for Kentucky. Your thoughts on all that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser, live from our Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Kentucky is out, and the discourse on John Calipari, very loud. People very upset with Coach Cal on our text line. So, Joe, the question is, do you think anything actually happens here? I mean, it feels like we've talked about this before. I would admit that now is probably as heated as I can remember with the Kentucky fan base over what's happened to this point. When you factor in everything that's going on in totality here. So with the buyout being, $34 million or whatever the number is, do you feel like anything actually happens here with John Calipari? Be that him being fired? We talked earlier this week about him potentially maybe leaving and going elsewhere. What do you think is the next step here for Kentucky?
Well, I do think that the Tubby Smith scenario is in play, and obviously, Mitch Barnhart and Kentucky would love that. I mean, I think it'd be best for all parties if he looks around and says, "Okay, you don't appreciate me, I'm going to go here, wherever it may be." I mean, maybe Michigan. Maybe Michigan will get in there and get some John Calipari.
Vandy.
Hey. Bring him to Nashville. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's, the thing is, it's well documented. He doesn't have a relationship with his AD, so it's like, but it's just that number is huge. Is that prohibitive for Kentucky? I mean, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be prohibitive for Kentucky. Excuse me. But, yeah, I'm kind of in the camp of, I just feel like I feel like he's going to be gone one way or the other. That's if I have to make a guess right now, I'm guessing he's going to be gone one way or the other.
Do you think I mean, look, we know that the Kentucky fan base and that sport is about as passionate and rabid as it gets. Do you think that they have reached the point of no return with negativity? I mean, look, what I'm about to say is two completely different animals as it relates to like the fan base and the pressure and all those things. But we talked about this with Stackhouse, right? I mean, at some point you reach a point of no return with the fan base where the negativity is just overwhelming and you're kind of forced to make a move at that point. Again, it's a very different thing in Kentucky, but do you think that they've reached that point where regardless of what the financial commitment to moving on from him may look like, that the negativity is outweighing kind of the positivity of that return and factoring in the money and all those things?
It's got to be close. The difference with him, of course, is like, look, I mean, recruiting is its own season, is its own obsession. So, I mean, no fan base obsesses over recruiting like Kentucky basketball fans. And he's got another huge, group of incredible stars coming in next year. But I thought this was as talented a group as I've seen from him. Coming in, like especially at least at guard, I mean, those in particular, those two guys, Shepard and Dillingham, but even Wagner. I mean, and then we see what happens. So that's the difference. Is like there's still like that whole, man, the talent, year after year, and people get mesmerized. But again, if you're going to keep doing this, at some point, people are like, okay, well, I guess I don't give a crap anymore because it doesn't matter. So I think it's pretty close.
Gunner on the text line says, I wouldn't have let Calipari back on the plane last night. He'd have been fired right there. People like Oakland expect to beat Cal's Kentucky team. He's an amazing promoter. He's more of a politician than a basketball coach. He's a clown, and all of Kentucky is done. This is from Gunner on the text line, who was very upset with John Calipari.
Tell us how you really feel there, Gunner.
That's basically the gist of all the texts we've got.
Yeah. Now, unnamed texter says, I'd rather hear about where Joe ventured out to eat than Kentucky's debacle. Well, I'll tell you that I got Salisbury steak macaroni, lean cuisine at the hotel at 1 a.m. As I came home. It was
well, that's good. You didn't have to drive an hour to do it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Got pretzels and hummus thing too. So there you go. But yeah, I think it's close, and it's going to be really interesting. I thought Kentucky. I mean, again, I had them in the Final Four. By the way, this is where I would agree with Jared a little bit on the brackets. Like once people's brackets start blowing up, I don't really care. But I will tell you, mine is. Also, Kansas maybe should have lost last night, and that was a very unfortunate I don't know if you've seen the replay, but
Oh yeah.
the missed call was Samford with a clean buckyball. That was an incredible game, but what a devastating missed call in that game to rob Samford of a chance to have the ball down one.
So let me ask you this. Is the SEC maybe a little bit overrated, or are we overreacting too much to 3 losses on the first day of the tournament?
Yeah, it happens every year. There's a league that's like down like for example, so NC State wins yesterday. Hey, they continue the roll. Like holy cow, NC State. What a story. I'm not sure has the ACC lost anybody yet. So people might be like, "Ooh, the ACC is better than we thought." Look, the SEC is way better than the ACC. I mean, that's the thing. They also play each other in the non-league these conferences. So I'm here for all the dunking on Sankey. I mean, I dunked on him in my column too. I had to take a shot. Um, but it's a mistake that is made every year of taking these one-offs and these various matchups and then saying, "Oh, actually, that league was this or that." The whole year, it's just like a team, right? I mean, Kentucky was certainly a top 15 team this year. Well, they're not a top 64 team. They're not certainly a top 32 team in this tournament. So yeah, it's a total prisoner of the moment overreaction thing. I will say that for the SEC's sake, I think the huge game today is Auburn. I
Yeah.
mean, look, I mean Auburn to me and your Gators. Those two are really good teams that
Don't
are
ever say that again.
well, you picked them. I'm
I
just
know.
saying.
That was
Those
a shot
games.
across the bow you just took at me. Well
Yes,
done.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was impressed with your pick. Those two teams do have a chance to and they the SEC needs Tennessee, Auburn, Florida to advance. And then
Yeah.
I mean I think Alabama's on upset alert today. So but yeah, yesterday's results, Kentucky got classic NCAA tournamented, okay?
Yep.
It's just and they've had their own issues as we've been talking about. Like it's just a real problem. I was disappointed in Mississippi State yesterday, but Izzo is really good. Michigan State still a good team. They're way overrated this year. Mississippi State just didn't bring their best game. They really didn't. Um, and then South Carolina, I didn't get to see much of that game, but I know that Kuznard, who was there, who they let go in the portal, puts 40 on them. So
Yeah. That's a tough one.
it's tough ones. They overachieved this year. Great season, great story. They have some limitations. So today is a big day though for the league to get some of these teams moving forward.
Mark on the text line says, "Nothing makes me smile more than to see Cal lose. Sincerely, a Memphis fan." This is from Mark on the text line. I called him the most overrated coach in sports. Is that off base? Are we in line there? What do we think?
Well, I mean, I think he gets a lot of crap because of all these early exits, but I will say, like I've at times with some of his teams, I've come around a little bit on man. That's a bunch of freshmen. Look how they're defending because he's had some actually really good young defensive teams, like some of the best defensive teams in the sport at times, right? So I mean, I think he's a good coach, he's more an talent accumulator than a coach, but I don't think he's like I've never bought the whole, just get the guys in and roll the ball out and hey, do whatever you want. I mean, I don't know. That's an interesting question. Who's the most overrated coach in sports? Question of the
Uh,
day. Should we have a
maybe
question of the day?
maybe we should. Who do you think is the most overrated coach in sports? I bet we get a lot of John Calipari answers this morning on that
Yeah,
front.
he
Would be my
would.
guess.
Yeah, if you did a poll today, he'd be hard to beat. But who else would go in that list?
That's a good question.
I mean, obviously you go across the sports, it's like, I mean, I have a hard time, like with baseball, I have a hard time.
Yeah.
Here's a guy who I thought was a great coach, and I've come to realize is not, which is Monty Williams.
Yeah.
But I mean, I, some people might look at like a Steve Kerr, but again, it's like all these coaches have success because they have great players. Yeah, great. Same with Phil Jackson. He's one of the most overrated coaches of all time. He's good, but like he never coached without Jordan, Pippen or Shaq Kobe. I mean, so
Bill
that's a great
Belichick
question. Well, he came to mind. I
can't get a
mean,
job.
the non Brady record is pretty ugly. I think the thing
Vrabel.
is if you if you're a coach, all these coaches are dependent, and the ones who are honest about it, like Will Wade, I appreciate. It's about the players, it's about the talent. But if you have it and you keep underachieving, which is what he's doing, then this is why you get discussed like this. I mean, he certainly has to be in the discussion.
No question about it. We'll continue to take your thoughts on Coach Cal and Kentucky's loss last night. We'll get to Jared Stillman coming up at 7 o'clock, get his thoughts on it as well. Coming up next, Preds just keep on rolling, man. They win again last night, a shutout performance against the Florida Panthers in a game where they were absolutely dominant. We'll get into that. Your thoughts on the Preds as well. Their winning streak continues, point streak continues, a new franchise record. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 the game.
just missing the connection with Philip Forsberg cutting down in front. Now Forsberg, right side, his backhander. That one stopped. Battle for the rebound. They score! Predators break through against Forsberg, and as you had predicted, Hal, it was going to have to be a rebound. And the Predators get it back out. Here's Forsberg and Forsling down the right wing side in the Florida zone. Puck tipped up, knocked down by Nyquist. Nyquist off the board, try to put it down in front. Forsberg right in front, and they score! And the Predators take a 3-0 lead. And that will do it. Predators extend their streak. The team record now 14-0-2 in their last 16 games as they get a goal each period and beat the Florida Panthers tonight 3-0 the final.
Reds win again last night, a franchise record, 16 games in a row with their point streak, a new record that continues going. We'll see if they get 17 tomorrow against the Detroit Red Wings. A 3-0 win last night for the Predators. Kevin Lankinen in goal, which I thought was a little bit of a surprising move, but he gets the shutout, and the Predators get a couple of goals from Philip Forsberg, one from Gus Nyquist, and they win 3-0. Joe, a game last night where basically from the puck drop until the time the final whistle blew, they were in complete control. I thought they played great in the first period. They had the 1-0 lead after one and just continued to build on it with the way the game went. I mean, look, Kevin Lankinen had to make a couple of really big saves, but for the most part, I thought the Predators played great defensively again. They did a good job of keeping most of the chances to the outside. The Predators were opportunistic offensively. They generated a good amount. The top line was awesome yet again. And look, no Barkov for the Panthers last night. So the Predators had admittedly in Winnipeg and now in Florida have caught a little bit of a break with Scheifele not playing in Winnipeg and with Barkov not playing last night in Florida. Having said that, they dominated Winnipeg and they dominated Florida last night. And this train just keeps on rolling, man. It was fun to watch. They were great last night. Played fantastic.
I actually did have the are they peaking too early thought. How can you sustain this? And yeah, I think it was a bit of a surprise that Lankinen's in there. And I saw Willie had a tweet. It was all his wins this year. I mean, he's put together some, it was these would be considered quad one wins, if this were basketball, but what a luxury to have him, able to step in and do what he's done. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, I get it. The injuries, a little bit of a, great players who are out of the lineup, but still, if you dominate that opponent with all the other players they have, the way they play at home and everything, what does that say about you?
Look, I'm running out of things to say about this group, man. At some point, they're just good. And Travis has been talking to us all week. At what point is a duck a duck? And he just texted in this morning. Well, it's a duck, Robby. I mean, they played great last night, and they look like a team that is just totally dialed in right now. And the thing that stands out, I mean, yes, Forsberg gets a couple last night. Nyquist played great again. I mean, that top line continues to be fantastic. I thought McCarron's line played great again. They generated some good chances. But defensively, they are just smothering teams right now. And they're doing it right now with three of their defensemen out of the lineup. But they are smothering teams. I thought they were all over Florida again last night. They're taking away time and space. They're getting sticks in lanes and shooting lanes. I mean, they're just doing all the little things right now. And again, Lankinen gets the shutout. And I think you think about your backup goaltender making 30 saves in Florida, that the Predators must have been in survival mode at one point. There was not one point in that game where I felt like the Predators weren't in complete control of it. And that to me, I mean, it's not only the winning that they're doing that we've talked about, it's the way they're winning. And they're just outplaying teams. And I mean, look, when you get to 14-0-2, generally that doesn't happen when you're just holding on for dear life. I mean, they're kicking teams' butts right now, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, and like you said, it's I think if the Preds could and the Preds fans could, they'd probably just fast forward to the playoffs right now, right? Let's see. I mean, because at this point, you're in really good shape. I don't know. I mean, we don't know what the matchup will be. I think that any of the matchups, I guess, if you clean slate and you start a playoff series, they're not going to be favored. But honestly, other than Colorado, because of just that high end that they have, I really think I mean, they could be a real problem for anybody they're going to face. And it's, you got what, 12 more games here to go. I
Yep.
mean, surely at some point there's going to be some ups and downs, some bumps. I mean, their goal differential, they're getting up there to, again, I mean, to me, that's usually tells you something once you get to this point of the season, right? And it
Yeah.
has changed so dramatically in the last month. It's amazing.
It really has. Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Ryan in Mount Juliet. Ryan, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Morning, guys. This team has just proven they can play either way. They can play scoring off the rush like they did against San Jose and other teams, or they can play grinding out hockey like they did last night or against Columbus when they have to. If this team, I know people don't like it, but this team is really showing signs of that cup-running team, peaking at the right time, goaltending situation's good, forwards are going good, defense is, like you said, smothering other opponents. And if you go back to the beginning of the season, Ryan O'Reilly had the best quote, said, if this team comes together, they can do great things. And obviously this is showing why he signed here, and he sees what he saw when he signed here on free agency signing day.
Yep. Thanks for the call, Ryan. Appreciate it. I mean, they're just humming right now. Like, I mean, there's not a thing right now. I mean, the power play could probably be a little bit better, although they scored a power play goal last night and it's starting to come along here. The penalty kill continues to play really well. I mean, they're doing everything right now. And I do wonder, it's been Rick Tockett's award to lose in terms of the coach of the year. And I still think it probably is. But I mean, they were talking about this on ESPN yesterday, kind of on the coverage part of it. I mean, at some point, with this streak going the way it is, and when you factor in expectations before the season, which were pretty low, like the Andrew Brunette part of this is pretty interesting. Like you gotta, I do wonder. I mean, I think the Jack Adams is voted on by the broadcasters, so like keeping up with all these different freaking NHL awards and who votes on them and who doesn't is exhausting. But I think it's the broadcasters that vote on the coach of the year, and I do wonder, like at some point here, how much Jack Adams momentum does he get with the way that this thing is turned around, the expectations for this group heading into the season, and just the absolute wagon that they've turned into out there of a hockey team. It's a really interesting discussion on the Andrew Brunette front too.
No, it is. And I mean, I think to overcome that perceived big lead, and I mean, like you said, I mean, I think it was a no-brainer for a lot of this season. I mean, you have to keep it up. But I think at this point, people need to start noticing this, understand what he inherited, understand the expectations for this team, because that's always a huge part of that's what part of the Vancouver thing, right? I mean, it's exceeding expectations is almost always a big part of a Coach of the Year award in any sport or league. So, I mean, that and the way that they have come together and play, I think he's got to get some notice. Ryan just mentioned the peaking at the right time. But I know, and I think I may have to try to go back and really try to break this down at some point or something. But these comparisons with that run are going to be more and more frequent. Just for the record, that 17 team before they went on their run, they finished 2-4-1. They were not peaking at the right time. They were not playing well. They lost the tough one to Winnipeg to fall into the 8. And of course, then we all thought they were toast. And then the playoffs started all over, and we know what happened. So, it's just that's actually, I mean, I get you think of it that way because the peaking at the right time was in the playoffs, but they actually were limping into the playoffs.
This happens every year in terms of there's always, not always, there's usually a team that makes a deep run in the playoffs that has gone on a heater at the end of the year. Like Edmonton last year after they made the Ekholm trade was borderline unstoppable in the regular season, and they mowed through the first round, and then they got put out after that. There's also usually a team, Joe, that just kind of limps in and does 500 or less in the last couple of weeks before the playoffs, and then they go win the Stanley Cup. Like things like that happen all the time. So trying to identify exactly what that formula is very difficult to do in the Stanley Cup playoffs because we've seen kind of different ways that it's gone down. Now, having said that, like beyond just the results, to me, it's more about the way they're playing. Like obviously the winning is great and the winning has been necessary. But the thing that encourages me the most if I'm a Predators fan is the way that you're winning. And it's not a fluke. And we've talked about that through this whole streak. The numbers tell you that it's not a fluke. Like they are just dominating teams right now. And it's the more they do it, the more I start to ask myself, is this just what they are? Because if this is just what they are, number one, what a dramatic turnaround in a very short amount of time. And number two, I mean, they could be as dangerous as they want to be if this is what they are. And that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. We'll have Jared Stillman coming up at 7 o'clock here in just a few minutes. We'll get his thoughts on the Preds, a franchise record set for the Predators last night with 16 games in a row with a point, a 3-0 win against Florida. We'll get his thoughts on the NCAA tournament as well. All that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Friday morning. And we welcome in our friend, as we do every Friday morning at 7 o'clock, Jared Stillman to the program. Jared, good morning. How are you?
Oh, I am super. I mean, I'm a little exhausted. I stayed up all night last night listening to the Kentucky Sports Radio call-in postgame show. And I got to tell you, for somebody who has had a miserable, miserable decade of basketball so far from my school, it has been every year. See, it's like the opposite. Being a Louisville fan, it's like the opposite right now of being a Tennessee fan. We have terrible November, December, January, and February's, and just a wonderful March when Kentucky loses. It was fantastic last night. That and the Predators win, which was, I think, kind of a contender status defining win last night. It was a wonderful sports evening for me. And I hope that Joe enjoyed not being able to watch any of it, sitting there to watch that boring UT basketball game last night.
Oh, don't worry. Oh, no. No, the entire arena was watching the Kentucky. In fact, they put it on all the screens so that the balls are warming up and it's looking up like, oh, my God, what is happening? Jack Dolkey. I mean, well, we all watched it. I
owe
basically miss
Joe an apology.
Oh.
After about the first media timeout, thought Oakland sucked so bad last night that I tweeted out that all the basketball bennies that told us there was no chance that told us there was a chance Oakland could beat Kentucky were over their basketball skis, which they often do this time of year, just like, everyone on TV saying Samford was going to beat Kansas. But Joe,
they lost by a bucket, yes.
You were right. You were right when you and your Benjamins got together and said, you guys watch out. We watched ESPNU for that one time nobody else did, and we know, and you guys were right.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful revelation here on the program. So, Jared, I thought Cal should have been fired 2 years ago, so I still obviously think he should be. Do you think the negativity with the fan base is reaching or has reached the point where Kentucky is going to be forced to make a move here, regardless of the money?
So I thought that it was kind of black and white to me. If Cal didn't get out of this weekend, he has to go. And the reality of Kentucky basketball is that they hold themselves to a certain standard, and the standard has just not been met. And I went on the radio in Louisville yesterday morning, did my weekly hit there, and I was like, they need to fire Cal if they lose. And they were like, they're not going to fire Cal. It's too much money. And I'm like, I thought you guys, I thought Kentucky basketball was the greatest program ever, and it just means more, and we have all the money and all the boosters and everything else. And so I feel like at this point the game has passed Calipari by. I think that the problem with Calipari is now that everybody can pay the players, he's lost his greatest advantage. And so because of that, I think that I think the situation's completely untenable. I think that between losing, his top assistants over the year like John Robick, and I don't know how he could have been of such help, but Kenny Payne, and even like the administrative help that he had from guys like Dwayne Peavy, who's now the AD at DePaul, I think that Calipari's kind of on his own island out there, and I think the situation's going to be so untenable. I was talking with somebody who's involved heavily in the Louisville basketball coaching search, and I'm like, something I don't think these candidates truly understand when it comes to Louisville is, let's say Dusty May at FAU is the next Louisville coach or the next Kentucky coach. I don't know if Dusty truly understands what it's like being in Miami where you're the 19th most important thing in town, and then you go to Louisville or you go to Kentucky and you're the basketball coach there. It really is like the attention and responsibility of an NFL head coach, and I don't think some of these guys get that. And so with that kind of anger and everything else, I mean, that's what Cal's going to be walking back into. And so I think what's going to happen is I think Kentucky and Calipari, I think they're going to file for divorce. And I think it's going to be a contentious week. And then Cal will walk away with about $20 million, 18 million, 22 million, somewhere in that range. And he'll go be the coach at Michigan or somewhere else next year. And Kentucky will go looking for a basketball coach.
See, I hear what you're saying about like everybody paying, but he's still getting the top class. I mean, it's still like Kentucky or Duke or Kansas, basically, right? every year. Like last year and this coming year, he's still getting these amazing classes. I mean, so I don't think that's like an excuse or really a reason in this. But I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying. I think it's you get to a point in college sports where it's untenable, where the negativity is just too much, and I think they're probably there.
I think that where Kentucky is with Calipari is kind of similar to where the Patriots were with Bill Belichick, where the initial like headline of firing Bill Belichick, but then it's like, look at the last handful of years. This isn't going to work. And I think that's how I feel about Kentucky. The one thing that Matt Jones started his post-game show last night and basically started it off by saying it's got to change. And, that's kind of, as sad as this sounds, when Matt Jones kind of is the focal leader of that fan base, says it's time to fire. I don't think I've ever heard Matt Jones say it's time to fire a coach. And I've been doing this, I went to college Billy Gillespie's last year, so I didn't listen to the radio then. I'm sure he said Billy Gillespie needed to be fired then. But I haven't heard that about a UK football coach or a UK basketball coach. And so once that kind of gets out there, now it's like the fans are kind of going to be elevated. It's going to be like Butch Jones's last year at Tennessee. And I don't think that Kentucky can bear that for an entire season. So, again, I think what's going to happen, they're not going to pay him the $30 million, but I think they're going to pay him close to the $30 million. And then Cal probably made whole because he'll go somewhere else and get $9 million a year to coach, and he'll be on his way. And then I think the next question is there anybody that's of liking that Kentucky can hire that will, make them feel as if they got the important, great coach that they feel like they deserve? But I think it is more likely than not Cal has coached his last game at Kentucky. In fact, I would put money. If you were to ask me the odds, I would say minus 250, Cal has coached his last game, plus 300, Cal's back next year.
Okay.
Bruce Pearl.
I like it. I like
Bruce
that.
Pearl. Bruce Pearl.
That would be something. So on the Preds front, Jared, I mean, I'm with you. That was, the 3-0 win. Your goalie makes 30 saves, and you think, okay, well, maybe the goalie just stood on his head, and that's not what happened last night. They kicked the Panthers' butt last night, and they've been kicking a lot of people's butts lately. And look, I'll be honest, I've been, I guess, hesitant is probably the right word to get into contender status here. But, at some point, you're 14-0-2. You keep beating everybody that's in front of you. You're going into some of the top teams in the West and the East and winning on the road. It feels like Andrew Brunette and this group have found a formula here where they are going to be as dangerous as anybody heading into the playoffs. And if I'm Colorado, if I'm Winnipeg, if I'm Dallas, if I'm Vancouver, whoever right now, I want no part of the Nashville Predators in the first round.
So ESPN.com put out their power rankings an hour ago. Number 1, Florida, beat them. Number 3, Colorado, beat them. Number 4, Winnipeg, beat them. It's L.A. number 10, beat them. Vegas number 12. The Predators are 11. At some point, I think the Predators right now are like the Detroit Lions of the NHL, where I think we could all say that had Detroit made the Super Bowl, I don't think we would have been surprised. Had Detroit won the Super Bowl, I don't think that we would have been surprised. But I think we can all agree that it also wouldn't have been a shock if the Rams had beaten Detroit in the first round. Detroit's not Kansas City, not San Francisco, not Baltimore, but I think we can all agree the Lions this year, a legitimate contender. And that's what I think the Predators are right now. I think the Predators are, I heard you guys say this earlier in the week, and I completely agree with it. I don't think they'd be favored in a first-round series, but I certainly think they can win any series that they play in, and equally, I think they can lose any series that they play in. And I think what's happened is, because of the way that Predators fans embraced that 2017 run, it's now like everything has to be exactly like 2017. And I really don't think this team is like 2017 at all, other than the fact that they have good goaltending. I don't think their defense is the same as it was in 17. I trust what they have up front with guys like O'Reilly, like a proven quantity, a lot more than I trusted what they had up front in 17. But I think that what happened was Predators fans, and I certainly am a part of this group, we were so sick and tired of hearing the David Poile and John Hines excuse of, well, if you make the playoffs, anything can happen. And I'm like, no, you're not going to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2021 with the team that you had. And you certainly weren't going to beat the Colorado Avalanche in 2022 with the team that you had. And I remember every game down the stretch of 2022, they played a playoff team. They got beat. And I remember the night that Saros got hurt. And I said, here comes the excuse. Here comes the excuse. And then when they lost without Saros in the playoffs, the typical places, well, if they had the goalie, no. And you guys know that too. And so I think because of that, a lot of Predators fans got discouraged from this whole, anything can happen in the playoffs. And, the St. Louis Blues in 2019, they got hot and they won the cup. And I think what I've realized through this is right now the Predators have officially crossed the line of, I really think anything can happen in these playoffs. They could get beat in 5 or 6 games. They could win the cup. And I think that it's, everything that's great about the hockey playoffs is what the Predators represent right now. And because this season was so unexpected, given the expectations that Barry Trotz laid out at the beginning of the year, I think it's more fun than it is anxious because it's not like the Predators have anything to lose.
Well, you brought it up, but I wanted to ask you guys, because Matthew from Jolton brought it up too. What about the comparison right now of this team to that Blues team?
I guess I would.
There's one guy who was on both. One guy who was on both.
The O'Reilly connection is. I would say the difference, the St. Louis team, the underlying metrics that they had were actually pretty good. They could not buy a save in the first half of the year, and then Jordan Binnington got ungodly hot, and that's why they ended up going on a roll. The Predators, their goaltending is really good right now, but
it was rough early.
But to me, they're not winning right now because of their goaltending. Their goaltending is a nice part of it. They're winning right now because they have the puck the entire game, which I think is probably more encouraging.
And so much fun to watch, by the way.
Yes, for sure.
By the way, I want an apology. I came on and apologized for Joe. I want an apology because 2 years ago, I think it was either Jared versus Joe or it was this program. I think it was you, Robby, because you knew what you were doing when you said this during the Colorado series. And you were like, Jared, what's the problem? And I said, the coach. And Joe went crazy. And so I'd like an apology from everybody that defended John Hines over the years, Joe and Hal and everybody else, that, hey, Jared was right about this one. I'm not right about a lot, especially when it comes to hockey. But I was right about this, and I could not be happier because the Predators went from having what I think is probably a below-average coach in Hines. I'm not trying to throw him under the bus right now, but probably a below-average coach in Hines.
You're still obsessed with him. My God, get over it.
Because I was right for 4 years, and everybody told me I was stupid and I didn't know hockey, and I was the one guy who constantly – Chris Mason came on the show to debate John Hines. And everybody told me, you don't know the game, you're stupid, you're this. And they went out, and Robby and I have talked about this. This guy's a great coach. He is, and I see it in guys like Lazan and Evangelista and Jankowski and Novak. And he is coaching up the entire team. He's taking guys who were Lazan was a third-pair defenseman that was only on this team because David Poyle wasted a second-round pick trying to trade for him. And the guy, he gets hurt. I'm like, oh, God, what are they going to do without him? And that is a testament to this coach. And so, again, I apologize to you, Joe, because I'm man enough to be able to admit that I was wrong about Oakland after one media timeout last night. All I ask for you to do is the same and admit that you were wrong about John Hines and I was right, and this is an example of that. And by the way, before you apologize, which I am expecting, I would say the other difference is, when it comes to St. Louis and that 2019 team, first of all, Binnington was a hot goaltender. Your goaltender is a good goaltender. And secondly,
correct,
that St. Louis team didn't have Roman Josi. And what this Roman Josi is doing right now, he had a play early in that game last night. Robby, I know you know what I'm talking about, where he took it in. And, I'm starting to be amazed by plays that he makes that don't result in goals. He's so good right now, and St. Louis never had a player like that.
Yeah, I'm definitely not apologizing, but how's your bracket doing?
Joe, why are you not apologizing?
Dude, I can't even, we don't have time to go back and forth on this. You apologize because you fly off the handle and have to tweet something after 2 seconds of a game. So good for you for apologizing for it, because that's what you do. You overreact to everything.
But
Broken
you
clock,
won't apologize for your years of John Hines defending.
So we're sitting here now, and all of a sudden we have absolute evidence that he's a terrible coach, because that's what you said. He's a terrible coach. Terrible coach. And my argument was always, wait a minute, haven't we been ripping Poyle for the roster? So if the roster's that bad, are you sure he's a terrible coach? I don't think he's a terrible coach.
I know Andrew Burnett took half of his roster and is about to compete for the Stanley Cup.
Is the roster different? Did Barry Trotz do anything or no?
Oh, no. Barry Trotz has done a fantastic job.
Okay.
I would not. And no, it's
is it a nuanced discussion? Is it a nuanced discussion?
I was
or
on
do you have
the one
to have
that kept telling you to
absolutes?
write columns and say, hey, David's got to go. And you, oh, no, I don't know. They turned it around in 2021.
Look, I will
You're
say,
just making stuff up.
I will say, look, I was not as down on John Hines certainly as Jared was, but look, they got a clear upgrading coach right now. There's no
I don't
question
disagree with
about
that. I don't disagree with that. No, but that's not apologizing to Jared just because he screams about everybody sucking and needing to be fired.
So, Robbie, I don't want to articulate your own opinion for you, but
Okay.
I do feel like you remember vividly, whether it was Joe or Hal or Chris or whoever, you remember the finger wagging and the pointing down to me specifically about the coach. And I
do remember.
And I think going back to that, I think you're on my side on this.
I'm Team Jared. Joe, how do we feel?
Your team, okay, Team Jared on what exactly?
Team Jared on Joe needs to apologize.
Joe, you must apologize.
No, I'm not apologizing.
That's good.
Tell us about your bracket.
Again, I came on the program today. I'm off today, by the way. So this is I wanted to come on the program today because Predators won and Cal.
What a gift! What a gracious gift.
I came on the program. First thing I said today, I said, Joe, I owe you and your basketball bennies who care about college basketball in November, I owe you guys an apology.
Because you overreact.
And Joe Rexrode cannot do the same. And I would like the record to show that Joe cannot, even when Robby, who's on Joe's side, even when Robby says that Joe needs to apologize, Joe can't apologize. And I just want you fans to understand all those years that we had to deal with the finger wagging of, hey, this John Hines a good coach. You guys don't understand hockey. We were right, and Joe was wrong.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said, you don't understand hockey. He's really good. That's it.
Have yourself a wonderful weekend, Jared. Enjoy your day off.
See you guys.
All righty. We'll react to what Jared had to say coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Say goodbye to busted brackets, folks, because FanDuel is going to let you bet on every game of this tournament, whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed. It's time to go dancing on America's #1 sports week. Joe Rexrode here to let you know new customers of FanDuel are going to get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Now, I told you can go point spreads, money lines. You can pick who's going to win it all, whatever you want to do. I'm trying to think, was I good this week? I did pick Samford. I believe they covered. They could not quite beat Kentucky. Man, they got hosed by a tough call. Let's look at the round of 32. I like Tennessee. I like Tennessee against Texas. I think it's obviously a much better matchup, but I like the Vols in that one. Just visit FanDuel.com/Joe102. Bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. You must be 21 or older, present in Tennessee. First online real money wager, only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is now withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem, call the Tennessee Red Line, 800-889-9789.
Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you. Thanks to Jared Stillman for joining us in the last segment.
Yeah, thanks.
I just got a text from Jared. It says, please state for the record that Ian yesterday uncovered a guarantee from Jared versus Joe that Dusty May would win one more tournament game in year one than or would win more tournament games in year one than Stackhouse did at Vandy, which must mean that Joe was on the other side of that. So now we're going to do a Dusty May, Gary Stackhouse argument on my own personal text line.
No, I'm really glad that he can investigate so many things so not thoroughly and just then make assumptions about them. By the way, Katie Rexrode texted me and said, it's true, you don't apologize. I mean, I'm not going to handle this slander today, folks.
Wow.
I apologize plenty. But again, it's like, John, I agree. Andrew Burnett has been an upgrade. He's been fantastic. John Hines is not some garbage coach. That's what Jared said over and over. I still disagree with him. I'm not apologizing for disagreeing with that. It's stupid. It's a stupid overreaction take, and it hasn't changed.
One thing I will say though, because I agree with you there. On the other side of this though, like I think there was a lot that was true on the other side of like people did go after Jared in terms of like thinking that John Hines was the greatest coach ever. Like thinking that he could do no wrong. And it's like, guys, there's a middle ground here between him being the greatest coach of all time and being absolutely terrible, as Jared throws out there. And some people couldn't find that on either sides of it, which always drove me nuts in that discourse.
Right, but you and I didn't do that.
Well, for sure, but we're
I mean,
we're
we
the most
were a
level-headed
lot
program in America.
Well, we were aligned on this, and now you're trying to say I need to apologize. Why isn't he asking for both of us to apologize?
I just want to see.
Why
you
do I
apologize.
get singled out?
Because I just wanted to see you apologize, and it's one of my favorite things to see you flustered with Jared. So that's why I did it.
I apologize a lot to a lot of people, including my wife. I am very hurt that she texted me that today. I'm also sleep deprived, Katie. How could you do that to me? I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're married to me. There you go. There's one.
Jared said last night's win is a cup contending level win for the Predators. Are we buying that? Are we buying? First off, I mean, look, nobody is going to pick the Predators, I don't think, to win the Stanley Cup heading into the playoffs. Do you buy them being a legitimate cup contender based on the last 16 games we've seen?
You know, I actually here's let me give Jared a compliment. I actually like his Lions analogy. It's like the team that. And there's been other teams, and I know it's never a great or a perfect comparison like that tournament to this tournament. This tournament, the Stanley Cup, the Stanley Cup playoffs is a different deal. But I like that idea, which is basically like, would I put them in, like, if you're saying who are the contenders, would I put them in that list? I probably wouldn't. But are they a team that you have to look at and take seriously and say, sure, that team could make a run? Yes. And that's not something I would have said a month ago. So they've certainly elevated to a point where you have to take them seriously. And it's not just, well, they got in. What a nice first year. They limped into the playoffs, and hey, a little experience for the young guys and good for them. It's more like, who wants to play these guys? It's a big change.
It's a big change. And I'm with you. Like, am I putting them over the Colorados and the Edmontons and the Floridas? Look, I understand they just went in there and destroyed Florida last night. The other thing to keep in mind here is like the playoffs are different from the standpoint of, it's a 7-game series. You have to make adjustments in the series. And we'll see, Andrew Brunette doesn't have a ton of experience doing that. So we'll see what that looks like come playoff time for him, as well as this group. But like right now, based on the way they're playing, if you told me like the Predators made some run to the conference final, would I think you're crazy with the way they're playing right now? No, I wouldn't. So does that qualify for them being a cup contender? I mean, yeah, I guess if you want to put them in your, I guess that depends on the eye of the beholder, and I said it earlier, if they play like this, they're going to have a chance against anybody they play. And that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to beat anybody they play, but they're going to have a chance against anybody they play if they're playing like this, which I did not think would be the case this time a month ago. I mean, look, I didn't think they'd be in the playoffs. So I do think there's a certain level of gravy to all of this, which makes it more fun. Like the expectations are low, and after the 9-2 loss to Dallas, you thought they were done. And the fact that it's been this dramatic of a switch, plus they're playing great and they're getting the results, it's lining up for a perfect storm of, I mean, this fan base is having a lot of fun watching this team right now. I mean, people are, texting us to start the show when we were talking about the NCAA tournament, like, okay, that's great. Let's get to the Predators. Like this fan base is fired up right now.
Yeah. And I do think in terms of the excitement, the feeling of possibility, I mean, I think it has not been this since the President's Trophy year, because in 19 it really was. It was like, oh, what's going on with these guys? Everybody thought they were going to be right on that very top list of contenders, and they just clearly weren't that year. They were starting to go the wrong way for a variety of reasons, and so that started the kind of angst years, of trying to hold on and still trying to see if you can keep that core together and do something. 18 was obviously just pure excitement, like that team. Of course, you win the President's Trophy. One, often you don't win the cup, but you're certainly one of the very short list of favorites to win the cup. That's not this, but I think the excitement and the feeling of a real opportunity to do something is the most since then.
We'll get back into the NCAA tournament coming up next. Take your thoughts on John Calipari and Kentucky losing last night. We'll look ahead to today's action as well. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Make sure you tune in to 102.5, 106.3 The Game this weekend for NCAA tournament coverage brought to you by Toyota. Ready, set, go. Get your Toyota today at Toyota.com. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you. We'll have the Rob rant coming up here in about 10 minutes. Joe, Coach Cal out. We got a lot of reaction to Kentucky losing yesterday in the tournament. Will Coach Cal be out? Will he be back next season? Will Kentucky pay the money that he's owed? Lots of strong reaction. Like I've not heard from anybody today so far that thinks that Kentucky should keep Coach Cal. Now, that's not necessarily expected after a game like last night where Oakland takes down Kentucky and they fail to reach the second weekend of the tournament again. Have not been there since 2019. This is going to be really interesting here to see what happens. The willingness of Kentucky and their administrators to make a decision if they want to make one. And also what we talked about earlier, and I do think it's true more so probably in college sports than it is in pro sports, but kind of that line of demarcation, a point of no return with the fan base. Is there a point where the negativity gets to where it forces to make you move? And I think we're getting pretty close to that with Coach Cal in Kentucky.
Yeah, and I think I could kind of see, well, look what happened with Vanderbilt and Stackhouse. You know, it was a mutual parting the ways. I believe there was a little bit of a reduction in the buyout in the process there. And I think that the same thing could happen here, and Cal move on and say, okay, all you folks who didn't appreciate me, I'll show you, and he'll get another good job. I tend to agree. Like, I would also put money on that was his last game coaching Kentucky, however it exactly shakes out.
Yep, it's going to be, well, first off, we know it's not going away. Like, this is going to be the biggest story in sports today is what's going on in Kentucky, what happens with Cal, and all of those things. Joe, today, day 2 of the tournament. So you got some upsets that we've already seen going down yesterday. Our national championship pick in Purdue is playing today, so we'll see what they're able to do there. But what are some games today that are on the docket that really catch your eye? We've talked about Auburn. They're a really interesting team. The SEC needs them to do well, but there's James Madison, Wisconsin, which I think has a chance to be a really interesting game. Grand Canyon, the Fighting Bryce Drews taking on St. Mary's. What do we make of today's slate in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, no, I'm into that one. I think New Mexico Clemson could be a really good game. Colorado Florida, big time game. You know, a game that's sneaky fun is Texas A&M Nebraska. It should be an up and down offense. I mean, Nebraska is fun, man. Nebraska basketball, Fred Hoiberg, Nebraska ball, they are actually worth watching. I think Charleston, Alabama is a fascinating game. James Madison, Wisconsin, that's an upset pick for me. I'm going with JMU. And I'll tell you, another game, Nick Keezer's Hilltoppers, wouldn't pick them to win, but I love their point guard. They are a fun team, a terrific coach who's come right in and gotten to his point. Marquette's point guard, Tyler Kolek, he's hurt. You know, I mean, I think Marquette's going to win, but I think that game could be more interesting, maybe the most interesting of the 15-2s.
Roll Tops.
There you go.
How many yards will Bailey Zappi throw for in that one?
1 billion.
Good stuff. Love it.
Just want to make sure that we get that on the record before the game starts later today. No, I think that could be an interesting one too. I mean, Auburn, with what they did in the SEC tournament, I mean, we know when they're on offensively, especially, they're as dangerous as anybody. I mean, I think they're gonna handle Yale today. We'll pretty easily. We'll wait and see what happens on that front, but you have got me now really pulling for an eventual Auburn-UConn matchup in this bracket, and I need to see it.
Yeah, no, I think anybody who likes basketball, that would be an absolute amazing game. So, look, I've also seen this before in this tournament where you have a team that wins a conference championship that absolutely spills it and they get shipped out somewhere. And man, I've done that Spokane trip a couple times in terms of coverage, and it's just, that's out there, man. And I mean, I don't think Yale can really challenge them today, but you know, if you get past that, let's see, what would be past that for them? The 5 is that's San Diego State, right? Is that right?
So. Yep.
Yeah, San Diego State. It's a pretty good draw. They need to get to the Sweet 16. I mean, the SEC needs, you know, Tennessee, Auburn, Those two in particular are the ones that you should be able to count on the most to get to that next weekend.
People are all over you today on the text line, Rexrode, about Michigan State. You not picking them yesterday and then them going out and pulling off the upset. I mean, I guess I'd like to point out that I had Mississippi State not only winning yesterday, but beating North Carolina in the next round and had them in the Sweet 16. So I guess I need my fair share of blame here too. But people all over you about Michigan State on the text line.
Well, Michigan State has been poopy this year. I mean, I've had to watch a lot of them. They're not good. They're way overrated. And I sat there and watched Mississippi State dismantle Tennessee a week ago, and sometimes that happens too, right? You're a little bit of the prisoner of the moment. They did not play well yesterday. Mississippi State just didn't play well. And Michigan State did a great job. I mean, they did a great job of taking Josh Hubbard out of the game, and they hit shots. You know, it really comes down to that. Michigan State has some guys who hit shots some games and don't. Jaden Akins, Tyson Walker hit their outside shots, and all of a sudden it opens everything up. I mean, any of these teams, it's like Tennessee coming up. You know, like if you're going to have a game where you go 4 for 18 from 3, that might do you in. And if you have a game where you go 10 for 22, you know, then it's going to be darn near impossible to beat you. So I apologize. I'll apologize for that. I will not apologize for anything else today.
Coming up next, it's time for the Rob Rant here on Robby and Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program, either the Rex Rant or the Rob Rant. We'll do that coming up next. Make sure you tune in to 102.5, 106.3 The Game today as Vanderbilt baseball takes on South Carolina on the road with pregame at 5:45, first pitch at 6 o'clock. Coverage also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at theGameNashville.com. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley here. You could say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every single game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. We've already seen some upsets in the tournament. Kentucky goes down yesterday. I'm still going with Purdue. I think this is going to be the year they break through, but you could take it any way you want to take it. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, whatever you want to use it on. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/Rob and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. You must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Don't make me angry.
Sometimes you have to tell someone to pound sand.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
This is the Rob Rant. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
What's up? This is Scott Stapp from Creed, and you're listening to Robby and Rexrode on 102.5 The Game. Did I say Rexrode right?
Rexrode.
Rexrode. Okay, let me do that
No
again.
worries.
What's up? This is Scott Stapp from Creed, and you're listening to Robby and Rexrode on 102.5 The Game.
Full pain and then heartburn. I mean, pulled pork is like, it's absolutely going right to the heartburn. I had to have 2 Pepsids, one's in the middle of the night to survive.
Don't talk to me about that.
It is that time of the day. Time for the Rob Rant here on Robby and Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program. Scott Stapp, who continues to make just a wonderful comeback in the music world, leading us into the segment. There's a nice video I came across my TikTok feed the other day, Joe, of Scott Stapp doing a concert and a bunch of shirtless dudes up in the crowd just jamming out. He was jamming out with them. Dude's a man of the people right now. Good to have him with us here on the program.
Yeah, wait, did Ryan Porth send that? I feel like Ryan Porth may have sent that to me, and I'm like, he said something like, well, this shows you something. I'm like, yeah, it shows me that if you get drunk enough, you can think any music is decent.
We appreciate Scott Stapp and his contributions to our program, as we do every time. So, Joe, Long Beach State eliminated from the NCAA tournament yesterday, and you may be out there thinking, oh, okay, well, who cares about Long Beach State? And I'm largely with you. But this story heading into the tournament, one was really cool to see the way that the team responded. But number 2, their athletic director started talking yesterday, and about halfway through the quote, I was like, is this really happening? Like, is this really what's going down here? So for those who don't know, Long Beach State was on a 5-game losing streak, and they fired their coach after that 5-game losing streak. And then Long Beach State went on a run last week to win the Big West tournament and to earn a bid into the NCAA tournament. So we've been talking about what a wild year it was for bid thieves and all these different things. And they go on an unexpected run. They win the Big West tournament. They get matched up in the NCAA tournament with Arizona. They go on to lose yesterday. But before the game yesterday, I mean, everybody was talking about the coach who was fired, who was allowed to coach the rest of the season, Coach Monson of Long Beach State. And the athletic director got in front of the media yesterday and said, quote, talking about the decision to fire the coach, "My belief and hope is that by doing what I did and the timing of it, they would play inspired. And that's what they did. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but it worked." That was the quote from Bobby Smitherin, the athletic director at Long Beach State, who looks like he's tried to take credit for firing the coach and then the team going on a run here in the NCAA tournament. I read that and I was like, is this real? Like, is he sitting here in the aftermath of this trying to be like, yeah, well, this is my plan the whole time, was to fire the coach and to let him coach out the rest of the year, and then the team go on a run after that. I could not believe that quote when I saw it yesterday. So, I mean, in some ways, I kind of respect it. I mean, it's a bold move to go out there and be like, yeah, I mean, this is my plan the whole time. I was going to fire the coach. I thought I would fire the team up. We'd go on a run to the NCAA tournament, and I'm an evil genius, and it worked. But I couldn't believe that somebody actually said that out loud as an athletic director in the media yesterday.
Yeah, is this the Onion? Is this that's not an Onion quote? That's a real quote. Imagine how much those players hate that guy. Like,
yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like anybody who's coming back next year to play, like, talk about just absolute. I mean, and not to mention like the entire coaching, fraternity now. I mean, and everybody, Tommy Lloyd went off on. I mean, like everybody's going. Like, there's gonna be others who are gonna go off about this whole thing. Well, just a ridiculous thing to say. Not trying to pat myself on the back, but
that was the best part.
Oh my God!
I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I'm just saying it worked.
Just saying.
Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what you had in mind in the middle of a 5-game losing streak before the Big West tournament was set to be played. Of, watch this, guys. I'm going to fire Dan Monson, and then you guys are going to go on this magical run through the conference tournament and make the NCAA tournament. Like, said that out loud.
I feel like you just need a little boost, and hey, I got it for you right here. Firing your coach.
Yeah, and then when apparently Munson's like healthcare immediately ended too. So
yes,
like, you can't give the guy like a 30-day like extension on the healthcare.
If I take away, if Dan's family can't go to the doctor, I really feel like these players are going to dig deep on defense.
What's this guy's name? Bobby Smitherin?
Smitherin.
Okay. AD of the year.
Yeah, what a joke. And then, of course, Dan Monson was asked about all that. And he said, quote, "Well, if it helped, I'm really happy we did it because I wouldn't trade it for the job or any other job. I've said that all along. If that's what spurred this, that's great. But we'll never know because that's how it's played out. We'll never know if it did or not. It's not really worth talking about." So a very classy way to handle that by Dan Monson. But my God, he's got to be thinking in the back of his mind, what a jackass this guy is over here making these comments in public and be like, well, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but me firing this guy, I think really spurred this on.
Yeah, look, it's been known for a long time in college basketball. Dan Munson is one of the really good guys. I mean, a really, really good guy. He was at Minnesota for a long. If people don't remember, the Gonzaga run, the initial run, 1999 to the Elite Eight, that was like, I mean, at that point, Gonzaga was St. Peter's. I mean, seriously. Not quite, but like they were out of nowhere. He was the coach. Mark Few then took over when Dan Munson went to Minnesota. So, in retrospect, probably should just stay there, right? But one of the really good guys in sports. And so to see him treated like this and then this clown, say stuff like that really is infuriating.
Here's another quote from the AD, Smitherin. Quote, "My job is to position our coaches and student athletes to be successful. This was maybe an atypical way to do so, but I believed in the roster we had. I believed in our coaching staff and our ability to do something special. Maybe this was the catalyst they needed to be inspired to play for one another. I believed in the coaching staff so much, Joe, that I fired him." That's what he's saying there.
My God. He sounds more like Mr. Burns than Smithers.
Excellent.
Good Lord. Well, I mean, talk about this. I mean, if you're any coach, if you're any player, if you're anybody in that athletic department, or if you're any, Dan Munson or anybody in his family, and you're listening to that, you're like, holy crap, really?
It is a shame that Long Beach State couldn't go on like some run here to get to like the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight, because what a storyline that would have continued to be had they fired this dude and then they go on some magical run in the NCAA tournament. So, I mean, they lost yesterday. I mean, they're a 15 seed going up against Arizona, so they're probably going to lose. But I was, when I saw this quote, and I saw this before the game yesterday, I was pulling like heck for Long Beach State. I really wish they could have made a magical run here.
Yeah, no, it would have been great. We're just gonna have to settle for Jack Golke and my guy Greg Campy. I tell you. But no, that would have been fun. It's quite a story. I just want to point out that on the text line it says, "Tell the text line to lay off Joe. You were the only person saying Kentucky should be on upset watch." I just want that on the record. Thank you.
You did say that multiple times.
But I chickened out, didn't pick it, and put them in my Final Four.
You did do that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, host of Talking with TD. We'll get TD's thoughts on how well-positioned the Titans are heading into the NFL draft, what they've done in free agency to this point, and a whole lot more. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
ESPN's Turon Davenport, Talking Titans, now on Robby and Rexrode on ESPN, 102.5 The Game, and the Game Nashville app.
It is that time of the week. We're joined by our friend Turon Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, host of Talking with TD on our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. TD, good morning. How we doing?
Hey, good morning. What's going on?
Not a lot, man. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. So, TD, I think one thing we can all agree on is as draft season kind of approaches here and we see what moves the Titans have made to this point is at some point the Titans need to probably heavily consider giving Jeffrey Simmons some help on the defensive line. And we've talked to you about Sweat and what he brings to the table. I've also seen you this week really kind of honing in on Darius Robinson out of Missouri. Specifically with Robinson, what do you like about him, and what do you think the options are going to look like for the Titans if they do want to address defensive tackle at or the defensive line in general at pick number 38?
Yeah, I think when you look at Robinson, the first thing that pops out is versatility. You see him lining up as a 3-4 end, a 4-3 tackle. He lines up for a wide alignment as a stand-up rusher. He does it all, and I think what's really impressive is just his use of hands. They're very strong and powerful. And you see him, the effort. There was a post where it showed him at 285 pounds run down a running back at Georgia, and I think you look at those types of things, that effort and all of that is great. As far as at 38, it'll be tough to get him there. Sweat is probably Tavondre Sweat. He's probably a more reasonable option there at 38 if they were to go defensive line. There will be some other options also. It's going to be interesting just seeing how and when the first defensive tackle goes, because I think it's probably going to be Byron Murphy, who coincidentally is Sweat's teammate. And then you got Jerzon Newton. A late option, honestly, Michael Hall Jr. out of Ohio State. He's a really impressive, smaller, like Aaron Donald type. I'm not saying the greatness, but just like that type of a lot of power in a compact body with really good get-off.
Still, he thinks you just said he's as good as Aaron Donald. I just want you to know that, TD.
Here we go.
Yeah. Context is lacking.
What about Sebastian Joseph? Not Sebastian Joseph Day. What about Sebastian Joseph and what he will bring to this team?
Yeah, apparently he wants to be called Sebastian Joseph Day. Actually, the Sebastian Joseph, I think, is just on like documents and things like that from what
I
understand from Titans PR. But nevertheless, we know who we're talking about. I think when you look at him, it's a big body, right? 6'4", 314 or so, 310. And he's just someone that can occupy the middle. Now, a couple of years ago, you talk about Aaron Donald, alongside Aaron Donald, he had a pretty good year. And obviously, a lot of guys would do that. You know what I mean? But then he signed with the Chargers and things didn't go right there, and he ended up with the 49ers towards the end of the year. So I think there's potential there. The good thing is he brings a lot of starts because before he joined the Titans, their defensive tackle group outside of Jeffrey Simmons had a combined 15 starts, and that was really, really questionable.
TD, on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, Ridley coming in obviously helps with the speed part of this. I mean, with Pollard coming on year number 2 coming up off the injury, hopefully he gets stronger with some of his underlying metrics as well. You've got Spears. Where do you think the Titans are with their team speed on the offensive side of the ball, and how much more work do you think needs to be done there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ridley helps that a lot, and he's someone, he plays fast. He doesn't necessarily, I mean, he was a 4-4 guy, so don't get it twisted. He's not slow. But he's not someone you would look at and just say, oh, he's a burner, but you watch him play, and that dude, he gets off, and his routes are amazing. So I think, you have that. That gives you a good plus. They still do need to get faster. That's why you look at some of these guys. A guy like Anthony Gold, out of Oregon State is someone I just am fooling around with these mock drafts. I continue to draft him in the 6th or 7th round because he gives you a punt return. That's a 4-3 guy, but you could also put him on the outside. Those types, I think they're going to need to add just because overall their team speed is still decent, but it's not – you put them on the field and you won't have them just clearly look faster than the other team. So that could still
have ground for improvement.
So, TD, we know that the Titans were close in terms of acquiring L'Jarius Sneed. They make a big spend. I guess you could look at it like instead on Ridley, but do you think that's dead? I mean, things have cooled off. There's some other teams that were in the discussions. I know, it's reported that he wants about $20 million a year, maybe be like the third highest paid corner behind Alexander and Ward. And obviously that's the sticking point is a team willing to do the long-term deal. Do you think that's dead, or do you think it's still possible that the Titans could get back in on him?
I had Matt Verderam on talking with TD this week, and the number is actually 22. He wants to be paid more than any corner in the league, and I wouldn't go there with him. He's a solid corner, a really good player. Don't get it twisted. Love his feistiness. You look at the video where he and Tyreek Hill, they're going at it, and he jammed Tyreek Hill to the ground, and Tyreek was like, wow, you jammed the bleep out of me. And it was pretty cool watching that video, but $22 million is a lot. Right now, from what I understand, the compensation that the Chiefs want is too much for the Titans. And so when you look at where the Titans are in this draft, they have limited picks. I would be surprised if they parted with one of the picks this year, but you never know. Things could change. Right now, it looks like the Chiefs and L'Jarius Sneed are going to end up, unless there's a trade on draft day, it looks like they're going to end up together, and next year they let him walk and they get that comp pick, whatever that may be.
So, TD, Joe Alt has his pro day yesterday. Apparently the Titans not there. Do you view that as the Titans playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers? How do you view that?
That's so funny about the draft because literally everything that's said is questioned on two sides of the story, and it's really intriguing when you have something like this, okay? I don't know what to make of that. I do believe that Joe Alt is a really good player, and you could have a part say, hey, look, what is there left to see? You got plenty of tape. He had a solid combine. What is there left to see? So you have that part, or you could have the other part was like, you know what? I want to have my offensive line coach get their hands on him and feel his power. Remember how Mike Vrabel used to go to these pro days and literally get in the stance and get engaged with these guys physically, and it gave him a good idea of their power and things like that. Now, not every coach does that, but, I mean, there's two ways to look at it, and honestly, I don't know which way to look at that Joe Alt situation. I do know that they may not be as sky high on him as other teams, but that doesn't mean that he's out of the running for pick number 7.
So do you think, because I've kind of gone back and forth, and I sort what happens, at least for me sometimes, I get into like mock draft world where I start to like think it's reality, and it feels like in mock draft world, Joe Alt, there's a gap, people think there's a pretty sizable gap between him and Olu Fashanu, but everything I know about Fashanu, I can make the case to take him over Joe Alt. What where do you come down just on those two?
Yeah, I like Alt a lot better than Fashanu.
Okay.
But that's just me. I think what's so securing about Alt is you almost know for sure this is your guy. He's your left tackle for the next 9 years, right? 9 to 10 years. And that's the comforting part of it. And I believe that he's the most pro-ready prospect in this draft. Now, does that mean there aren't any warts on him? Heck no. He's a waist bender at 6'9". I hate to see him go against pass rushers like Harold Landry. I think that's going to give him trouble at times. But there's so much there with him. Olu Fashanu, when you're looking at him, I think it's more of an upside thing. I mean, he's solid now. Don't get it twisted. But the same things that I saw from Alt as far as like lunging at times and sometimes being out of control and missing the target, I saw that with Fashanu. So I'm not big on Fashanu, and I know that the thing about the 8.5-inch hands is coming out, but I mean, as long as he could get his hands on the guy first, I don't think that's a huge issue. but that's something else for people to get hung up on. And I feel Alt is the better player.
So TD, to that point, last thing for you here. I mean, the draft is, in terms of the way things could go here, is pretty interesting. I feel pretty good about 3 quarterbacks being taken before the Titans. And based on LA trading Keenan Allen, it kind of looks like they're trending wide receiver right now. But let me ask you this, though. Let's say that Joe Alt goes off the board before the Titans are there, and they do have him above every other tackle. Would you, at that point, be willing to take, whether it's a Roma Dunze or a Malik Neighbors or whatever receiver it would be that falls to the Titans at 7? Or would you be intrigued by trading back if there's a legitimate offer for you to trade back at that point? Now that you have Calvin Ridley, would you be more willing to do that rather than take a Dunze or Neighbors if they're there?
Well, I tell you what, if those guys are there at 7, boy, it's awfully intriguing. It's awfully tempting.
Sure is.
You want to rush that card in, and it's like, okay, you want a Benz or a Beamer, right? A Dunze or a Neighbor. It depends on like what you like, you know. But I think if there's a reasonable offer to trade back, I would entertain it. Brock Bowers is someone that I think would be in play if there's a trade back. But here's the thing, man: the Jets at 10, right? They signed Tyron Smith. I don't know if they don't go for a guy like Brock Bowers. So now you got to look at, okay, how far back can you go? And there's so many options with this draft and every draft, and that's another thing that I just absolutely love about it. I would entertain trading back, though, because you look at a group that includes Talise Fuaga. You look at a group that includes Troy Fautano. Now, granted, there's a bit of a drop-off, you know, from Alt. I don't think it's a huge drop-off to where you give up a chance to get a guy like a Chop Robinson or, you know, a guy like a Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas, like one of those guys that will probably be there in the 20s. You know, if you could get a small drop back from 7 and a second first-round pick. So it'll be tough. I would probably entertain trading back, though.
Well, TD, great stuff as always, man. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us. Hope you have a great weekend. And tell us about our friends at ESPN Bet Sportsbook.
Yeah, for sure. Hope you guys have a great weekend also. And a part of a great weekend is taking part in ESPN Bet, which is now live in Tennessee. And it's ready to take you through all the huge sports moments this spring. You got March Madness coming. It's the exclusive sports book of ESPN, and it has it all. It includes offers and promotions from Scott Van Pelt and Stephen A. Smith. So from the playoff intensity to getting on the links and out to the ballpark, there's no better time to be a sports fan. As a new user, you get $100 in bonus bets for making any sportsbook bet. You download ESPN Bet today and make a play. You must be 21 or older and in Tennessee. For gambling support, call or text the TN Red Line 800-889-9789. As always, terms and conditions apply. Go ahead and download that app for details.
We'll have more coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Score big this spring with Lee Company and the Nashville Predators in the 10K Power Play giveaway. Enter for a chance to win a Kohler home generator or $10,000 towards Lee Company Home Services. That's right, a Kohler home generator or $10,000 towards Lee Company Home Services. All you got to do, go online to leecompany.com/giveaway in order to enter. That's leecompany.com/giveaway in the 10K Power Play giveaway. Contest entries are accepted until Saturday, April the 20th. Lee Company, all you need. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Appreciate TD for being with us in the last segment. Joe, that first off, that scenario is interesting to think about. Like, if the Titans really love Joe Alt and he's off the board, do you take one of the receivers? Or if there's a reasonable offer to trade back, do you do that? The second part of this, apparently the Titans not at the pro day for Joe Alt yesterday. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Because I guess, like TD said, you may have all the information, all the film, but I know that these guys, I'll go back to last year. Like, I went to Ohio State's pro day and kind of doing a story on Carthon, and, we talked about, like, what's the value of these things? And it's not like it's the first time I've heard it, but it's like a big thing at these things. And Vrabel was there too with Carthon. They were kind of all over the field, but is watching these guys interact with their teammates and just getting a feel for how they are around people and things like that. Just a lot of this stuff. You're not just going there to, let's see that shuttle run, how many times you're going to get that bench up, that's all. That's kind of secondary to the seeing them in their environment, around their teammates, around their coaches, how they treat people. Like, things like that are valued. So I am a little surprised that they wouldn't go to Joe Alt's pro day and just observe him in that way. They value that. Carthon has said he values that. I think probably everybody in this league does and should value things like that, those little intangibles. Obviously, you can have the visit also to your place, but that's still a job interview where they're talking to your people. It's not getting a feel for, like, what is this guy like in a locker room, and how does that relate? So yeah, I would never have guessed that, and I don't know what to make of it. I guess you could say they're trying to throw people off the scent.
That was the first reaction I had.
Maybe
I don't like going to somebody's pro day doesn't really mean you're drafting them.
Exactly. Plus, it's like that's a pro day with actually a lot of prospects. So, like,
exactly,
you could be. They have a few guys that are going to get drafted. I don't know, man. That one's wild. If you force me to guess what it means, maybe it means they're just not high on him.
Well, maybe they're not. And look, I can't sit here and tell you if that's the case, whether that would be the right decision or not. We'll wait and see what happens there. But it would be a case where mock draft season, as we love to call it, and some of the actual way that teams view these players don't quite line up. Now, I will say this, like, if the Titans get to number 7 and Joe Alt's there and they pass on Joe Alt for somebody else and Joe Alt goes on to be Joe Thomas out there, they're going to look like absolute morons if that's the way things go down.
Yeah, no doubt. It looks like, Stilly's texting me, Thomas Dimitrov analytics on Joe Alt right now. So he's all in. He's moved on from the film room to PFF boy, but
he's all into PFF. That's for sure.
All the information is, and again, there's misinformation, and then there's, like, people who cover the draft. If you get a consensus over and over again from people who aren't even telling you what team, you know what I mean? It's pretty clear. Joe Alt is the most valued and highly regarded tackle prospect in this draft. The consensus opinion doesn't mean he will be an all-pro. And maybe if there's somebody that they have identified, they've got a really good guy in the building to evaluate offensive linemen, then okay, that's fine. But yeah, just not being there and just doing all the due diligence on him is surprising.
Well, I guess it could be the case of, as TD pointed out, like, what more do we need to see from the guy? Like, we've seen all we need to see. There's no point wasting our time going up there. We know how great he is. Like, it could be that, but even that, I would still think you'd want to, like, be around him for a little while, right? And get your hands on it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's where those pro days are valued, is them in their natural environment with their teammates, with their coaches, with the strength coach, with the people who work there. I mean, like these people get into super intense scrutiny of the personality of these prospects because they're, everybody wants a good locker room. Nobody wants a bad locker room. That's where pro days, I think, are absolutely valued the most. So they know what he is as a player. The film is way more important than whatever he does in any workout, but it's not about the workout.
Titans going J.J. McCarthy at 7. They in quarterbacks. What if they go to J.J. McCarthy's pro day? What happens then?
Of course, J.J. McCarthy's pro day, there's a ton of other prospects. I don't know if that's
if they go?
His pro day.
What if they go?
Well, I mean, then if they go to that, then I'm thinking, okay, so they love, Roman Wilson, or they love Mike Sanders still at the nickel or something like that. But we can have fun with it, though.
We've got a nice competition for you coming in here. You, J.J. McCarthy, and Mason Rudolph. We're loading up with all these quarterbacks.
Wow, what a triple-headed threat that would be, I tell you. It is going to be interesting to see because I don't know all the dates of other pro days for other tackles and stuff, but what ones they do go to if they go to some of the other tackles pro days.
Caleb on the text line says the obsession with how these guys look in scripted workouts against air is insane to me. John from Clarksville says, how many times do teams draft a player they didn't talk to or view their pro day? It seems like every draft a team selects someone that they showed no interest in. This is from John in Clarksville on the text line. I would hope you've at least talked to them if you're going to draft them in the first round.
I mean, different teams are different. I mean, for John Robinson, there was definitely a correlation between visits and people being picked. Again, like what Caleb say, it's not it's not that. It really is like the being around someone as much as possible. Like in Indy, the interviews are more valued by the teams. For example, like that, the film is way better evaluation, especially if you have guys who play at the highest level in college football and play against other guys who are coming into the NFL. That's way more valuable for what is this person physically as a player. The other things, though, including pro day for sure, are about the intangibles.
Yeah, I mean, look, are there situations that have happened where, especially like in the first round, where maybe a team hasn't spent a ton of time with a player, hasn't interviewed the player because they didn't expect them to be there, and all of a sudden, like they, an Aaron Rodgers style drop, and they just keep falling, and they get to their pick and they have to pick them. Has that happened before? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it has. But by and large, I mean, you'd like to get, I think, as much time around. Like when you're picking number 7 overall, whether it's a Dunze or Neighbors or Alt or Fashanu or Bowers, whoever. Like if I'm the Titans, I want as much time around those guys as humanly possible as I'm trying to make the decision that I'm making.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So sometimes you do have that, and it's like the surprise. Sometimes there's some, cloak and dagger to it, I imagine. But to me, like the getting your own information as much as you can is so much more valuable than misinforming some other team. I mean, I would think, at least. I'm sure there's been examples in years past of, a team throwing a curveball